What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you guys with the most up-to-date political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. Happy Tuesday, everybody, and a very happy Year of the Tiger. Over the weekend, the Washington think tank Center for New American Security published a war game and corresponding special report exploring how dependent the world is on Taiwanese computer chips and how that dependency could draw the United States and China into various kinds of conflict. In the war game scenario included in the report, a sudden failure at 3 Taiwanese semiconductor foundries that make high-end computer chips used to make everything from smartphones to electric vehicles to military equipment, quote, raises questions of whether a cyber attack by Beijing was responsible, sparking an international crisis between China and the US. End quote. The report argues that this very possible scenario, quote, grinds the global economy to a halt and incites a military confrontation. End quote. I've included a link to the report and the wargame scenario in the description below. With the deteriorating situation across the Taiwan Strait, there has been increasing attention on Taiwan, and in particular Taiwan's central role in advanced chip manufacturing. Many argue now that chip technology, along with data, is the oil of the 21st century. Indeed, the New American Security Report opens by expressing that semiconductors are essential to military systems used by the United States and its allies and partners to defend themselves and their interests. At the fundamental level, the day-to-day functioning of modern society hinges on dependable access to chips. Critical infrastructure, transportation networks, and digital communication cannot function without them. Politicians are catching up to these realities too. This month, the United States Congress has been looking at bills to increase domestic production of semiconductors in the United States itself. Indeed, US President Biden has been vocal in promoting these efforts, expressing last week, quote, today we barely produce 10% of computer chips despite being a leader in chip design and research, and we don't have the ability to make the most advanced chips now. But today, 75% of production takes place in East Asia. 90% of the most advanced chips are made in Taiwan. China is doing everything it can to take over the global market so that they can try to outcompete the rest of us and have a lot of applications, including military applications. End quote. However, bringing high-end manufacturing of chips to the United States and Europe, for that matter, is easier said than done. Speaking to the New York Times, American Enterprise Institute scholar Dan Blumenthal expressed, quote, it's almost impossible to duplicate Taiwan's manufacturing capabilities of high-end chips. It's just the manufacturing hub of the world. End quote. Now, moving back to the theme of the role of chips in sparking wider conflict, some experts have warned that such ideas are overblown. For example, speaking to the same publication, Dr. Bonnie Lin of the Center for Strategic and International Studies expressed in response to the Center for a New American Security report, quote, China is not going to base their Taiwan policy or any decision to use force against Taiwan based on chips. China thinks about the costs of an invasion of Taiwan. There are significant political and military costs. That is why I don't think chips would figure among the top 3 factors of using military force against Taiwan. On the mainland, of course, China is also pouring billions of dollars into improving semiconductor manufacturing capabilities too, though it is even further behind Europe and North America in this regard. This week, Chinese financial media outlet Caixin Media reports that the chip-making subsidy of Chinese electric car giant BYD Co. Limited, who we have spoken about in the past in relation to electric vehicles, quote, won the nod from the Shenzhen Stock Exchange for its IPO, as Beijing pushes for greater self-sufficiency in semiconductors amid US sanctions and a global chip shortage. End quote. While they certainly have their work cut out for them, according to global technology research house Omdia, OMDIA, none of the world's top 10 automotive-grade semiconductor makers in 2020 came from China. The company is doing well domestically though, ranking among the top 5 makers of automotive chips in China by sales. According to the Caixin article, BYD Semiconductor Co. Limited seeks to raise 2 billion RMB, approximately $314 million through the issuance of 50 million new shares. That would represent 10% of the chip makers' enlarged share capital, doubling its valuation to 10 billion RMB from 10 billion RMB in 2020. Quote, BYD Semiconductor plans to spend most of its IPO proceeds on chip design as well as research and development, which is seen as essential to improving its competitiveness. End quote. Like I said, these companies are quite far behind, so they will need all the R&D and the capital they can get. Now, one more quick thing while we're on chips. Bloomberg is reporting today that congestion at the world's busiest port in Shanghai is being compounded by reductions in air cargo capacity at the city's main airport, a situation, the publication argues, that will likely raise costs further for the low-end semiconductor industry. Billionaire George Soros has once again publicly expressed his pessimism and criticism towards China and its leadership, even going as far as taking the contrarian position that General Secretary Xi Jinping may fail to maintain power into a third term during the party congress at the end of 2022. Speaking at an event hosted by the Hoover Institute at Stanford University on yesterday, the 91-year-old investor, citing several crises from Evergrande to the ongoing pandemic, expressed, quote, given the strong opposition within the Communist Party, Xi Jinping's carefully choreographed elevation to the level of Mao Zedong and Deng Xiaoping may never occur. End quote. Soros even went so far as to argue that he sees a fight to remove Xi from power due to his management of the economy and pandemic, expressing, quote, Xi is under attack from those who are inspired by Deng Xiaoping's ideas and want to see a greater role for private enterprise. End quote. Most mainstream China analysts believe that Xi will likely maintain power into his third term. Soros took the opportunity to discuss his views on the wider PRC system, expressing that China's current economic model, which relies on property development, is quote-unquote unsustainable, with buyers using borrowed money forced to start paying for their apartments before they're even built, and local governments relying on land sales for income. Issues we have discussed on China Update many times. Soros expressed that citizens who invested the bulk of their savings in real estate will turn against Xi if prices fall. More on this shortly. Soros added that the outbreak of Omicron in the country, quote, is no longer under control, end quote, and strict lockdowns risk, quote, a backlash among the population, end quote. When asked to respond to Soros' criticisms of the General Secretary back in 2019, the PRC Foreign Ministry said such comments were quote-unquote meaningless and not worth their time to respond to. Soros' comments this time will likely get a similar response from the Chinese Foreign Ministry. Quickly, if you're enjoying the episode, don't forget to hit that like button. It's the only way this video can be shown to new people. And if you're watching this for the first time, you're getting some value from the episode, maybe consider subscribing, hit that bell notification, and you'll have the most up-to-date analysis when I release these every day. Okay, let's move on. And last up, the Evergrande crisis, and specifically house prices. New data published just a few hours ago today shows that house prices are only holding on by the skin of their teeth in the People's Republic of China, and there is no sign of recovery as other metrics like land sales and second-hand home prices continue to look pessimistic. According to data from the China Index Academy, one of the country's largest independent real estate research firms, published, like I said, just a few hours ago today, new home prices in 100 cities surveyed by the Academy fell 0.01% in January from a month earlier, the second decline in 2 months. Such a small decline shows that local and national regulatory efforts are barely keeping prices up. In December, prices fell by 0.02%. We've been following the housing and property development sectors very closely for months now. We know that Beijing's initial policy of forcing developers to deleverage has shaken the entire industry and the wider economy, and now Beijing is trying to balance its approach while avoiding a collapse in the development industry and of house prices, either of which would be devastating.
Indeed, regulators seem to have gone back to the old playbook, with recent moves including lowering mortgage rates, offering subsidies, and urging banks to provide more credit to leverage developers. We also covered the recent decision to make it easier for property developers to access funds from prepayments placed in escrow.
Hey guys, I'd love to hear what you thought about some of the updates we covered in today's episode, so throw your comments below. Always love hearing from you. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.